Okay, we're recording now. Oops, that's not the one I want. Okay. So let's take a look at what we're doing today. We're still dealing with chapter 5. We're in the section called Integrated Problems. Supposedly, in this section, we're not learning anything new. We're just using the tools that we learned in chapter 5, A and B. But in fact, they've hidden some concepts in here that we're going to have to deal with that they should have introduced beforehand. So I've sort of listed the things they're going to surprise us with. One of them is the concept of rate of markup can be expanded from an individual item to a group of differently priced items. We'll take a look at this when they give us a question dealing with this. They've also calculated or presented us with something that I refer to as an artificially inflated price. And what they're telling us here is that companies will put a price tag on an item that is higher than they actually expect to get. What they're wanting to do is advertise that they're having, say, a 30% off sale. And when they take 30% off this item, amazingly enough, it'll come down to exactly equal to the regular selling price. But they don't want to tell the customer that's the regular selling price. They want to tell the customer that's the sale price. So they've managed to attract the customer's attention with the 30% off. The customer thinks they're getting a good deal, but in fact, they're selling the product for their regular selling price. The company just feels they'll sell more of the product if the customer thinks they're getting a certain percentage off. Strangely enough, this sales tactic is illegal, but apparently stores do it anyway. And your textbook here teaches you how to do it, even though it's totally illegal. So another thing you have to keep in mind here is that markdown is always calculated from the highest price that has ever been offered. And where this becomes an important consideration is when the company has put on an artificially inflated price. Even though they never contemplated selling the product at that high price. If they're going to mark it down, they've got to advertise the markdown as being from that artificially inflated price. So always remember, when you're calculating markdown, It's not necessarily off the regular selling price. It's off the highest price that's ever been offered. However, when the store is calculating their expenses, they're always based on the regular selling price, not the sale price and not the artificially inflated price. And this basic rule should apply all the time. But unfortunately, they give you two intentionally tricky questions where they ignore that rule. So we'll have to take a look at why they've managed to do that. But as a basic rule, always remember, expenses should be based on the regular selling price. And that's because things like your heat, rent, light, taxes, paper, all the costs you can imagine for running your business don't change just because you put some item on sale. So always remember, we're going to base expenses on the regular selling price. And in just about every question in the textbook, if they've said expenses are based on cost, then profit is based on cost. If they've said expenses are based on selling price, profit is based on selling price. And then out of the blue, they give us one question where expenses can be based on cost, while profit is based on regular selling price. So you have to be careful that they haven't sort of tried to switch it up that way. So having gone through those sort of little ideas that we have to keep in the back of our mind, let's take a look at some of these now fairly complicated questions. So I'll come up with the whiteboard here if I can find it. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, let's take a look at what they've done to us here. Aldo's Shoes bought a shipment of 200 pairs of women's shoes for $42 a pair. The store sold 120 pairs at the regular selling price of $125 per pair, 60 pairs at a clearance sale at a discount of 40%, and the remaining pairs during an inventory sale at a price that equals cost plus overhead, i.e. this would be a break-even price. And the store's overhead is 50% of cost. So let's see what we can do with this information. To start with, they've told us there were 200 pairs. And they were $42 a pair. So we're going to need to know the total amount they paid. So we need a calculator. If you're coming up with an answer faster than me, put it in the chat box. So I'm getting 8,400. So we know they paid 8,400. And now we've got to consider three situations. first off, we have to consider the shoes that sold at the regular price. And we were told they sold for 125, and they sold 120 of them. So we can figure out the revenue they got there. So that generated $15,000 worth of revenue. And then there's these that were at the clearance sale. And what have they told us here? There were 60 of them at a discount of 40%. So we know there were 60 shoes, but a discount of 40%. So we've got to take the regular selling price. Let's do that over here. 125, 1 minus 40%, so 0.4. So this is 0.6. So 125 times 0.6, 75. Thank you for putting that in the box. That's correct. So we know there was a price of 75 and they sold 60 of them. So they generated 4,500 revenue there. And the remaining pairs, so they haven't been nice enough to tell us the remaining pairs, so we got to figure that out. 200 minus 120 minus 60 equals, and I think you're correct, I think that's 20. 200 minus 120 minus 60 is definitely 20. So for these inventory, we'll call this inventory. There were 20 of them, and they were sold at a price that equals cost plus overhead. And so we need to figure out how much that is. So we know their cost was 42. So we need a break-even price. 42 plus, and they told us about overhead, which is expenses, is 50% of cost. So 0.5 times 42. And I can see the answer there, and I'm fairly sure that's correct. 0.5 times 42 plus 42 is indeed 63. So we can put that over here, 63, and we want to know how much revenue they generated here. 63 times 20 is 1,260. So now that we've generated all this nonsense, let's take a look. Part A said, what was the price at which the shoes were sold during the clearance sale? And we figured that out. The answer to that was 75. What was the selling price during the inventory sale? And we figured that out. That was 63. Now they're saying, what was the total profit realized on the shipment? So profit is going to be equal to total revenue minus their total cost. And so we can figure out, by adding this up, we can figure out their total revenue. 15000 plus 4500 plus 1260. So their total revenue was 20760. And so here, we're going to put that in here, 20760. And we need to get total cost. So how are we going to figure that? It's going to be cost, which we've figured out to be 8,400, and their overhead. So this is now 0.5 times 8,400. That's going to be their total cost. So 0.5 times 8,400 plus 8,400. I'm getting 12600. And so this will equal some number that I don't know yet. 20760 minus 12600. So their total profit on these shoes was $8,160. So that's the total profit on the shipment. Try that. 8,160. So now they say, what was the average rate of markup based on cost that was realized on the shipment? And here's where we have to sort of stretch the concept of rate of markup a little. What we know about rate of markup is markup based on cost equals markup divided by cost, which is S minus C over C, right? That's our basic formula for calculating the rate of markup based on cost when we're dealing with one unit. But now they want us to deal with the whole shipment. So this selling price has to be their total revenue. We're going to put their total revenue in here, 20760. But cost, this isn't total cost. This is where this question is a little tricky. We can't put in the 12600. We're only putting in the 8400 because our definition here says cost, not total cost. And this is going to be divided by 8,400. We're going to go times 100 to turn it into a percentage and see what we get. So 20760 minus 8,400 divided by 8,400 times 100. We're not told how many decimal places to go to. So it's 147.1428,571%. And whatever number of decimal places they asked for, that's what we'd have to go to. So that's a situation where we had to sort of think outside the box a little and make this formula, which was given to us to basically understand markup based on cost for one unit, and stretch it a little to make it fit the whole thing. Now, someone has asked me, please explain I'm not sure what part of it you would like me to explain. I can sort of go over it all again from the beginning. Because they've given us three different prices, the regular price, the clearance price, and the inventory sale price, we had to do three different calculations to get the revenue. The total profit, we have to figure out total revenue. So we added up the revenues. For the total cost, our equation for total cost is equal to cost plus expenses. And so this was our cost, and these were our expenses, because they told us up here about overhead, but overhead and expenses are exactly the same thing. So we knew that overhead was 50% of cost. So that's where we came up with this number here, this 12600. Um, 75 times 60 equals 4,500. Let's check it. Does it equal it? 75 times 60, yes. What happened here was the 75 was the price. Over here, we figured out the price at the clearance center, because the clearance center price, they were sold at a discount of 40%. So we were given the regular selling price of 125, but if they're sold at a discount of 40%, this is our 1 minus D equation. This is 40% is 0.4. So 1 minus 0.4 is 0.6. So 125, 60% of 125 is $75. And we bought that over here, and they told us the 60. So we did 75 times 60 equals 4,500. Does that help? Okay. So they give you, I think, several questions where we have to lump things together and figure out the whole package, the average, rather than just the individuals. So let's save that. And let's look at the next one. So much the same situation. Let's see what they've given us. The pottery store bought 600 pans, auctioned off for 4,950. This means each pan had the same cost, but they weren't actually nice enough to tell us the cost. So we're expected to figure that out. So let's figure that out first. 4,950 oops, 950 divided by 600. What does that equal? So that tells us that each pan had a cost of $8.25. We're definitely going to need that piece of information. On inspection, the pans were classified as normal, seconds, or substandard. So again, we have 3 categories to worry about. So let's deal with the normal first. Okay, so you can all see the whiteboard, hopefully. So we'll look at the normal, and they told us there was 360 of them. So 360, and they were sold at a markup of 80% of cost. So we're being told for the normal, markup equaled 80%, 0.8 times cost, which we figured out as being $8.25. So let's figure out what that markup was. 0.8 times 8.25. So they were sold at a markup of $6.60. So their selling price would have been 8.25 plus 660. So plus 8.25. So they must have been sold at $14.85. So we can take that back here and figure out the revenue generated by those things times 14.85. And we'll go with that 5,346. So we know the revenue and the price for the normal ones. Let's deal with these seconds. What do we know? There were 190 pans classified as, that should probably say as, seconds, were sold at a markup of 20%. So let's figure that out. Markup equals 0.2 times 8.25. So that's 165. So S equals 8.25 plus 1.65. And what did that come to? $9.90. So we take that back over here, the $9.90, and see the revenue they generated there. Looks like 1,881. So now we have these substandard ones, and we're just told the remaining pans. So we got to do a separate calculation here. 600 minus 360 minus 190. How many is that that ended up being substandard? Looks like 50 pans. So we're going to take 50 of them, and we have to figure out their cost. They were sold at 20% below their cost. So that would be a discount. So the selling price here would be a discount 8.25, 1 minus 0.2. So this would be 0.8 in here. So 8.25 times 0.8, and yes, 660 looks good there. So we're going to bring that over here, multiply it by the 50 to figure out the revenue they generated from the substandard pans. So 50 times 6.6, and I'm getting 330. And a few other people were getting 330. So we now have sort of an idea of what happened here. At this point, let's look at the questions. What was the unit price at which each of the three classifications was sold? So we figured that out. 14.85, 990, and 660. Okay. If overhead is 33.33% of cost, what was the amount of profit realized on the shipment? So they've told us about expenses again, 33.33% of cost. So let's figure out their total. Well, first off, let's figure out their, total cost. We need total cost equals cost plus expenses. And we know what their cost was. It was 4,950. I'm going to take this 33.33% and change it into 1/3. And it's 1/3 of cost. So times 4,950. So let's find out what all that nonsense is. 1 divided by 3 times 4,950 is indeed 1,650 plus 4,950. So I'm getting 6,600. So we know their cost and we don't know their revenue yet, but we can add up these revenues. Yes, 33.1/3%. That's one of those supposedly commonly known fractional equivalents, and we can just replace it with 1/3. It makes something that looks complicated much easier. 5,346 plus 1,881 plus 330. So their revenue is 7,557. And so now that we know their revenue, and over here we know their total cost, we can figure out profit. Equals total revenue minus total cost. So 7,557 minus 6,600. And I think that's indeed the right answer that I'm seeing popping up there quicker than I can grab my calculator. 957. So That's the amount of profit, 957. So here again, the average rate of markup based on selling price. And here's where they want us to stretch this concept a little. So let's squish it in here and see if we can make it make sense. Our basic formula for rate of markup based on selling price, markup based on selling price equals markup divided by selling price, which is selling price minus cost over selling price. And this was given to us to deal with one unit. But now we're going to stretch this concept. For selling price, we're going to put our total revenue. We're going to put 7,557. But for cost, in this formula, it's not total cost, it's just cost, which we know is 4,950. But in this case, it's based on the selling price. So 7,557. We're going to go times 100 to turn it into a percentage. And so what do we get there? 7,557 minus 4,950 divided by 7,557 times 100. I'm getting 34.4978 1659. And they didn't bother to tell us how many decimal places we were supposed to go to. So I'll put an answer up here to 2 decimal places. 49 would be 50, I guess. So any particular questions that need to be asked? So can you explain why it's 1/3? Yes, let's go through that calculation. We have 33 1/3%, and our challenge is to change this into a fraction. The first thing we're going to do is change this mixed number into a improper fraction. So 3 times 33 plus 1 gives us 100 over 3%. And then we're going to get rid of the percent sign. So now we have 100 over 3 divided by 100. But we want to invert and multiply. So I'm going to put this 100 over 1. Just so when we flip it, everything will be in the right place. So now we have 100 over 3 times, and we invert, this becomes 1 over 100. And so 100 times 1 is 100. 3 times 100 is 300. But we can reduce this by getting rid of these zeros. We basically divide both by 100, and it becomes 1 over 3. Does that help? That's the process you would have to follow if we hadn't been told to just memorize that table. And I've put that table on your formula sheet. So you don't necessarily have to memorize it, but there's a few of them you're going to memorize, like 16 2/3 equals 1/6. That's one of the other ones they use continually. So any other questions that need to be asked before we take a look at another question here? Okay, let's save that. And clear that and take a look at the next piece of nonsense they've inflicted on us. So what have they told us here? Something called the Cheetah, a fast, sporty, and efficient new vehicle, has just been introduced by Canadian Motors. The local dealer, Andretti's, purchased one of the cars at a list price of $2,685, less 30%. So first off, let's deal with that because we want to know what they actually paid for it. So 2,7,685 less 30%, 1 minus 0.3. So this is 0.7. Let's find out what that is. 2,7,685 times 0.7. So they really paid 1,9,379.50. So that's basically our answer to A. Now, Andretti sets a marked price on all vehicles so that it can offer a regular advertised discount of 10%. So this is the artificially inflated price. But before we can do that, we need to figure out the regular price. So what do we know? Excuse me. What do we know about the regular price? S equals C plus E plus P. Do we know anything about expenses and profit? They have a markup of 40% of the cost. So we can't use E and P because they haven't given us enough information. So S equals C plus M. So the cost we now know was 1,9,379.50 and 45%, so 0.45 of the cost, which we now know, 1,9,379.50. So we can figure out the regular selling price here somehow. 1,9,379.5 times 0.45 plus 1,9,379.5. So I'm getting a selling price, a regular selling price of 28,100.28. So that's basically our answer to part B. And they want to know the marked price. In other words, the artificially inflated price. And let's take a look at how we find that. We're going to go back to this basic formula here. N equals L 1 minus D. And in this case, we don't know the list price. The list price here will be the artificially inflated price. What we know is we know the price they want to get, which is what we just figured out. 28100.28 equals the list price, which we don't know, but we do know that they're going to advertise a sale. They're going to have a regular sale of 10%. So 0.1. So that this process is how we'll come up with their artificially inflated price, because we know the price they want and we know the sale they're advertising. So now we can just divide through 28100.28 divided by 0.9. And I see some answers up there. 28100.28 divided by 0.9. So they're going to put a price tag here of $31,220.53. So this is the and this one over here is the regular selling price. So any thoughts or concerns about how that worked? They're going to get you to calculate those artificially inflated prices. Well, we haven't actually answered it. It says, during its annual sale, instead of the usual discount, a different markdown was offered. Ah, I see. I missed part of the question. How did I lose that? So there was a part D here that I missed. So let's do part D here. This was C here. So it says during its annual sale, instead of the usual discount, a different markdown was offered by advertising the car at $25,995. So now we need the rate of markdown. I've been asked, why is it called the artificially inflated price? It's the price we charge is already sort of inflated because it has to include the profit and the expenses. So the selling price is already inflated above the cost. But in this case, they've added another sort of layer of inflation to the cost or to the price. But I refer to it as being artificial because artificial means it's not real. And in this case, it's not a real price because they don't intend to sell it at that price. So it could be just called a fake price, right? It's just artificially inflated price is just another way of saying it's a fake price. Like fake news. It's not a real price. It's just a fake price that they put on there so they can advertise a discount. So let's go back to this, the rate of markdown at the discount. So whenever you're calculating rate of markdown, you need to keep track of these 4 items. The highest price, which I'll call the list, the lowest price, the dollar value of the discount, and then you can calculate the rate as being the dollar value of the discount divided by the list. So be careful to keep track of these items. And the list price here, yes, this class is being recorded. So hopefully that will help you later. So the list price here is going to be the highest price we offered it for, 31222.53. The net price is the lower price, which they gave us, 25995. And so the discount is the difference between these two, which we're going to have to calculate. 31222.53 minus 25995. So the discount, the dollar value of the discount is 5227.53. And now we can divide 5227.53 divided by, for some reason my light here keeps flickering on and off. Hope that means my power is not going off. And of course, we'll go times 100 to turn it into a percentage. Let's see what we get here. So I got 16.7428 136%. And they didn't really tell us how many decimals to go to. So let's call it 16.74% and assume we're going to 2 decimals. So any thoughts or concerns at that point? Always remember, when you're calculating the rate of discount or the rate of markdown, keep track of those 4 items: the highest price, the lowest, the lower price, the difference, and then divide the difference by the higher price. Let's see what other nonsense they can do to us. So, something called Big Sound Electronics purchased equipment from the manufacturer at a cost of $960 less 30% and 15%. So the first thing we're going to have to do is figure out what their actual cost was. Let's do that. $960 1 minus 0.3 1 minus 0.15. So this, in this bracket, we'd have 0.7, and here we'd have 0.85. So 960 times 0.7 times 0.85. So I'm getting that their real cost is $571.20. So according to Big Sound's price strategy, all merchandise is marked at a price that allows an ongoing discount of 20%. So this is their artificially inflated or fake price. And maintain a profit of 15% of the regular selling price. So overhead is 25% of the regular selling price. So we can calculate, we need to calculate the regular selling price. S equals C plus E plus P. We now know their cost was $571.20. Their overhead is 25% of the regular selling price. So 0.25 S, and their profit is 15%. So 0.15 S. So these things all need to leap over. S minus 0.25 S minus 0.15 S still equal to 571.20. And so how much of S do we have left over here? 1 minus 0.25 minus 0.15. This turns out to be 0.6 S equals 571.20. So that allows us to calculate S. What do we get there? So that gives us a regular selling price of $952. And now we can calculate the artificially inflated price. because there's 20%. So what we're going to do is take the price we know they want, $9.52, equal to some price we don't know, but we do know we're having a 20% off sale. So 0.2. So L equals 952 over 0.8. So the artificially inflated price is going to be 1,190. So during its annual Boxing Week sale, the usual discount of 20% was replaced by a markdown of 45%. So let's find out what they actually sold it for during the Boxing Week sale. 1190, 1 minus 0.45. So this is going to be 0.55. So they sold it at 654.50 during the Boxing Week sale. Now, what operating profit or loss was made during the Boxing Week sale? So we're back to this equation, S equals C plus E plus P. But instead of the regular selling price here, they want us to use the sale price. And the expenses are always based on the regular selling price. So we have to remember that our regular selling price was $9.52. So let's calculate expenses equals, what were we told? Overhead, 25% of the regular selling price. So 952, just times 0.25. So their expenses turned out to be 238. So we're going to solve for profit or maybe loss. So we know that their selling price during the sale was $654.50. We know their cost somewhere up here, $571.20. Their expenses are $238 plus P. So when we solve this, we're going to get P equal to $654.50 minus $571.20 minus $238. Let's see if we can figure out what all that came to. 654.50 minus 571.20 minus 238. And I'm getting a negative 154.70. So any thoughts or concerns at that point? Okay, we will save that picture anyway, and take a look at the next thing they can inflict on us. So something called discount electronics buys stereos for $830 less 37.5 and 12.5%. So the first thing they're expecting us to do is figure out their actual cost. So let's deal with that first. So let's figure out what's in the brackets first. 1 minus 37.5% is 0.625. 1 minus 12.5% is 0.875. And let's see what that equals. So I'm getting 453 here. So by all means, let me know if you get anything different. 453.91. So that's what we did with the first sentence. Expenses are 20% of cost and required profit is 15% of the regular selling price. So this is where they've, the only question in the book where they've based expenses on cost and profit on selling price. But as long as we read it and realize that's what they've done, we can still figure it out. So S equals C plus E plus P. So S equals cost, 453.91, plus expenses, which is 0.2 of cost, which we know is 453.91, plus profit, which is 15%, 0.15, but of the regular selling price. So this has to leap over here, S minus 0.15 S. And what do we get here? 0.2 times 453.91. So I'm getting 453.91 plus 90.78. And so this will become 0.85 S equal to 544.69. So now we are in a position to calculate S equals okay, good. I was worried there for a minute. So I'm getting that the regular selling price is 640.81. So we're still not finished reading the whole question. All merchandise is marked with a price so that the store can advertise a discount of 30% while still maintaining its regular markup. So again, they have an artificially inflated price. They just never call it that. But we know that's what they're doing. So we're going to again go to N equals L 1 minus D. And we know the price they want. It's their regular selling price, 640.81. We don't know the price they're going to put on it, but we do know they're advertising a discount of 30%, 1 minus 0.3. So we can find the artificially inflated price, which is the list in this equation, as 640.81 divided by 0.7. So they're going to put a price tag of 915.44. So the last thing they tell us is during the annual clearance sale, the new regular selling price of unsold items is marked down by 50%. So they're going to put it on sale, but it's going to be a reduction off their artificially inflated price. So let's take a look at how that'll work. 915.44, 1 minus 0.5. So this will again be 0.5 equals. So 915.44 times 0.5 is 457.72. Now, annoyingly enough, when I brought the question over, somehow I missed the last line again. I don't know why that line is disappearing, but let's grab it again. Seems a little weird having it down here, but oops. Better having it down here than nowhere. What operating profit or loss does the store make on items sold during the sale? So again, what do they want us to do? We're looking at the sale price equals cost plus expenses plus profit, and they want us to solve for profit. We have to remember that expenses are still based on the regular selling price. So let's calculate expenses equals the regular selling price that we figured out somewhere here of 640.81, and expenses, oh, no, sorry, expenses are 20% of cost. So let's back up there. Expenses are 20% of cost, and cost was 453.91 times 0.2, which I think we already figured out as being 9078. Yeah, we already figured that out as being $90.78. So we can roll these back into this equation. The sale price is 457.72 equals the cost of 453.91, expenses of 90.78 plus profit. So when we solve for profit, we're going to end up with 457.72 minus 453.91 minus 90.78. And we have to figure out what that is. So 457.72 minus 453.91 minus 90.78, and I'm getting they made a loss of 86.97. So that's the answer to the only actual question they asked us. What operating profit or loss does the store make on items during the sale? So any questions that you feel need to be asked there? Let's save that. Snapshot. Get rid of all of that. See what other terrible things they can do to us. And we didn't lose the question this time. So basically, they're just getting us to do the same painful process again. We can figure out the cost. $198, 1 minus 0.6. 16 2/3 is going to be 1/6, which they just expect you to memorize. 1 minus 1/6. So 1 minus 0.6, this will be 0.4. And 1 minus 1/6 will leave us with 5/6. So when I plug this into my calculator, I'll start with 5 divided by 6 times 0.4, and then times 198. So I get their cost being 66. Expenses are 45% of the regular selling price, and net profit is 25% of the regular selling price. So armed with that information, we can figure out the regular selling price equals cost, which is 66 plus 0.45 S plus 0.25 S. So these have to leap over S minus 0.45 S minus 0.25 S equals 66. So we got to figure out how much S we have left. 1 minus 0.45 minus 0.25. We've only got 0.3 S equals 66. So we can figure out S must equal 66 divided by 0.3. $220. So they're going to sell these communication devices for $220. So now we can keep reading. According to the company's pricing strategy, the merchandise is marked with a price that allows it to advertise a 37.5% discount while still maintaining its usual markup. So again, this is the artificially inflated price. And so we know the price we want is $220. We don't know the artificially inflated price, but we do know the sale we're having is 37.5%. So 1 minus 0.375. And this allows us to find the price tag they're going to put on this thing. It's 220 divided by 1 minus 0.375 is 0.625. So 220 divided by 0.625, they're going to put a price tag of $352 on there, unless I screwed up the calculation. So we're still not finished reading the entire question. During the annual inventory sale, the unsold equipment was marked down 25% of the marked price. So they're going to put it on sale. So their price was $352, and now they're marking it down 55%. 1 minus 0.55. So this is 0.44. No, 45. Let's see what that did to them. So it looks like they actually sold them for 158.40. So what was the profit or loss? Again, we're going for S equals C plus E plus P, but they don't want us to use the regular selling price. They want us to use the sale price equals the cost plus the expenses plus the profit. And the expenses are still based on the regular selling price. So E equals, what did they tell us? Expenses are 45%, 0.45 of the regular selling price, which was the $220. So let's see what that was. Looks like $99. So we can put all our numbers back into this now. The sale price of $158.40 equals the cost of 66 plus 99 plus profit. And so profit, it's written 55% of the marked price. When they say the marked price, notice up here, according to the company's pricing strategy, the merchandise is marked with a price that allows them. So this is the marked price. What I'm calling the artificially inflated price is what they've called the marked price in this question. They never call it the artificially inflated price in any question anywhere in the textbook. That's just what I call it. They call it various other things, but that's what it is. So 158.40 minus 66 minus 99. So what did they do here? 158.40 minus 66 minus 99 gives us negative $6.60. So although they only ask us one question, we have to do a lot of calculating to get there. And they're not done with us yet. They keep repeating the same process over and over again. So Lund's Pro Shop purchased sets of golf clubs for 500 less 40% and 16 2/3%. So again, the first thing we have to do is figure out their cost. 500, 1 minus 0.4 and 1 minus 16 2/3 is going to be 1/6. So this is going to be 0.6 and 5/6. So let's see what they actually paid for them. I'll start with 5 divided by 6 times 0.6 times 500. Turns out to be exactly half price, $250. Expenses are 20% of the regular selling price and required profit is 17.5. So again, we can figure out the regular selling price. S equals cost of $250 plus 0.2 times S plus 0.175 of S. So S minus 0.2 S minus 0.175 S equals 250. So how many S's do we have left? 1 minus 0.2 minus 0.175. We have 0.6 0.25 S still equal to 250. So S equals 250 divided by 0.625. And I don't know what that is, but I'm being told it's 400. 250 divided by 0.625. And indeed, I agree now, it is 400. So we've only read 2 of the sentences so far. The store decided to place a marked price on the clubs that allows it to offer a 30% discount without affecting its markup. And remember, its margin. And remember, margin and markup mean exactly the same thing. So so our next step that we have to do is, we know the price they want is 400. We don't know the artificially inflated price, but we do know that they're advertising a 36% discount. Okay, so list must be equal to 400 divided by 0.64. So 400 divided by 0.64, I'm getting 625. So that's their artificially inflated price. At the end of the season, the unsold sets were advertised at a discount of 54%. So we can figure out the end of season sale price. We have to start with the artificially inflated price, 625, 1 minus 0.54. So this must be 0.46. So I'm getting that they're selling these things at $287.50. And again, they're asking us the same concept. What operating profit or loss was realized? So we have to go the sale price equals cost plus expenses plus profit. We know the sale price, we know the cost, but we need to figure out the expenses. Expenses is, what did they tell us? 20%, so 0.2 of the regular selling price, which was 400. I'm getting 80. So we can roll all these back into this equation and make sense of it. The sale price is this, 287.50 equals the cost, 250 plus expenses, 80 plus profit. So profit must be equal to 287.50 minus 250 minus 80. And that'll give us the answer to the question they're actually asking us. 287.5 minus 250 minus 80. and I'm getting negative 4250. Okay. So let's take a look at the next one. So I figure by this point, you've either understood how these work or you've gone to sleep. So let's take a look at what they've done to us here. Big Boy Appliances bought self-cleaning ovens for 900, less 33.33% and 5%. So the first thing we need to figure out is their cost. And I'll just kind of hang around here, pretend I'm earning a living until you guys figure out what the cost is. So I've got one answer there. I need a few more answers to make sure we agree on that. I've got two answers and they agree. That's good. Three, so I got three people that agree on it. Once five people agree on the same answer, we got four now. Once five people agree on the same answer, we'll decide it must be good. Okay, so we all, at least five of us agree that this must be 570. Let's go with that. So then they tell us expenses are 15% of the regular selling price and profit is 9% of the regular selling price. So that allows us to figure out the regular selling price. So I'll just kind of hang out here till a few of us can agree on what that must be. So we got one regular selling price. Now we just got to see if 4 other people come up with the same. Oh, we got 2, 3, 4. We're getting there. Oh, now we got 5 all agreeing, so we'll go with that. A regular selling price of $7.50. So now it says, for competitive reasons, the store marks all merchandise with a price so that a discount of 25% can be advertised without affecting the margin. So this allows us to calculate the artificially inflated price, which I'm going to call the fake price because it's easier to write. So what is the artificially inflated price they're going to charge here? That's 2. That's 3. 3 people have agreed on it, so it's looking good. Oh, 4 people now agree on the same price. Okay, 5 people agree on the same price. Let's go with that. 1,000. So to promote sales, the ovens were marked down 40%. So now we're going to have to look for the sale price. Okay, we got 1 sale price.
Hello.
I hear someone trying to speak to me. I can't quite hear what they're trying to say. You might try putting your question in the chat box because the audio is not coming through very well. So I'm still waiting for 4 more people to agree on what the sale price was. Now only 3 people need to agree. Now I need 2 people to agree. Nobody's come up with any other answer yet. Oh, 4 now. So just 1 more. So we've agreed that the sale price is 600. And so then they're asking about the profit or loss. And several people have already told me that it's a loss of 82.50. So pretty well the same question we've done several times. So any questions on how that worked before we look at the next one? Okay, what other nonsense can they do to us here? So at least this is a little different. That other process was getting a bit boring. Let's take a look here. Magder's Furniture Emporium bought a dining room suite that must be regularly sold for 5,250. So in this case, they've just gone ahead and told us the selling price. Let's make a note of that. 5,250 to cover cost, overhead expenses of 50%. So expenses are 50%, 0.5 of cost, and a normal net profit of 25% of cost. So profit equals 0.25 cost. The suite is marked at a price so that the store can allow a 20% discount and still receive the required regular selling price. So that's referring to the artificially inflated or fake price. When the suite remained unsold, the store owner decided to mark the suite down for an inventory clearance sale. To arrive at the rate of markdown, the owner decided that the store's profit would have to be no less than 10% of the normal net profit, and that part of the markdown would be covered by reducing the commission paid to the salesperson. The normal commission, which accounts for 40% of the overhead, was reduced by 1/3, or 33 1/3%. So let's figure out what we can do with all this information. As we know the selling price, and we know something about expenses and something about profit, we can still go back to this equation, S equals C plus E plus P, but we're going to be solving it for C because we know the selling price, 5250 equals cost plus 0.5 cost plus 0.25 cost. So these can all be added together. We've got an invisible 1. So 1 plus 0.5 plus 0.25. So this becomes 1.75. 5250 equals 1.75 cost. So cost must be 5250 divided by 1.75. Let's see what that is. 5250 divided by 1.75. And yes, indeed, I do get 3,000 there. So now we can figure out the artificially inflated price, although we could have figured it out anyway, because they'd given us the sale price. So to find that artificially inflated price, we're going to take the regular price of 5250. We don't know the artificially inflated price, but we do know that they're advertising a 20% discount. So 1 minus 0.2. So list equals 5250 divided by 0.8. 5250 divided by 0.8. So it looks like they're going to put a price of $6,562.50. So that's the artificially inflated or fake price. So what do we now know? When the suite remained unsold, the store owner decided to mark the suite down for an inventory clearance sale. To arrive at the rate of markdown, the owner decided that the store's profit would have to be no less than 10% of the normal profit. No less than 10%. So let's find out what 10% of the normal profit was. What do we know about profit? Profit equals 0.25 cost, which was 0.25 times 3,000. So what is that? 0.25 times 3,000 is 750. And so the reduced profit equals 10%, so 0.1 times 750. So if the store's profit would be no less than 10%, so they need to make $75 profit. That's what he's decided. And that part of the markdown would be covered by reducing the commission to the salespeople. So we need to figure out something about the commission. So what do we know? Commission. And the normal commission is 40% of the overhead, which is the expenses. So expenses equals 0.5 cost, which is 0.5 times 3,000. So what does that give us? 0.5 times 3,000 is going to give us 1,500. That's the normal overhead or the normal expenses, but the commission is 40% of that. So commission equals 40%, 0.4 times 1,500. So that's 600. So that their normal commission would have been $600, but they're going to reduce it by 1/3. So reduced commission equals 600, and it's a reduction. So 1 minus 1/3. So they're going to get 2/3 of their commission. So 2 divided by 3 times 600. So their commission is going to be reduced to 400. So now we got to put all the pieces of this together again somehow. Let's give ourselves some space to work here. We're back to using this formula. Sale price equals cost plus expenses plus profit. We don't know the sale price. We do know the cost though. The cost was 3,000. And we know something about the expenses. The expenses were 1,500, and 600 of that was the commission. So let's work that out. We should have worked that out earlier. Expenses. What do we know here? We know they were 1,500, but of that 1,500, 600 was the commission. So 1500 minus 600 equals 900. So the 900 is all the other expenses other than the salespeople's commission. But now, instead of adding 600, the reduced expenses is going to be 900 plus 400. So 1,300. So let me know if that doesn't make any sense, because they've reduced the commission by $200. So that makes the overall expenses reduced by $200. So the expenses here would be 1,300, and they've reduced the profit all the way down to 75. So we can figure out a sale price now. Hopefully those add up to the sale price. And I'm getting a sale price of 4,375. And now they've asked us about the maximum rate of markdown. So let's move on to another page with some of our numbers here.
Mr. Brown,
Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
For the expenses, why should we minus 600?
What we originally figured out, based on where they told us up here that overhead expenses are 50% of cost, right? So we figured out 0.5 of cost. So 0.5 of 3,000 is 1,500. So we figured out that if nothing changed, if they hadn't put this on sale, their expenses would have been 1,500. However, they've told us the normal commission, which is one of the expenses of doing business, accounts for 40% of the overhead. So we calculated 40% of the expenses, because overhead and expenses are the same thing. We counted 40% of the overhead to be $600. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And then they told us that the commission was reduced by 33.33%, which is 1/3. So if this was 600 and they reduced it by 1/3, in other words, the salespeople are still going to get 2/3 of their commission, but it's been reduced by 1/3, they're down to getting 400 instead of 600. So I should have figured out this somewhere up here where it belongs, but I forgot that we had to do this. The expenses were 1,500, but if we took away the 600 commission, the normal expenses are 900. And that must be things like heat, rent, light, taxes, paper, all of the usual expenses we associate with running a business must be 900. And so that hasn't changed. They still have to pay the 900, but they could reduce the amount they paid to the salespeople, which they did. Instead of paying the salespeople $600, they only paid them 400. So we added the 400 back to the 900 and got 1,300, which is the $200 reduction, which they've taken away from the salespeople. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. I mean, it's not an easy question, there's a lot of tricky parts to it. So the last part is the rate of markdown. So let's make a note of what we need. The highest price they've ever offered is the 6562.50. And the lowest price we've now decided they're going to offer is 4375. So let's go over and calculate that. Whenever you're calculating rate of markdown, keep track of the higher price, which is 6562.50. The lower of the two prices, which I'm going to call the net, 4375. And then the dollar value of the difference, which I found to be 2187.5. And then you can calculate the rate of markdown or the rate of discount as the dollar value over the list. So 2187.50 over 6562.50 and times 100 to turn it into a percentage. And I got exactly 33 1/3%. And so that 33 1/3% would be our final answer here. Well, that would be the maximum rate of markdown that can be advertised when they put this thing on sale at the inventory clearance. So hopefully, if you go over all those calculations and reread the question a few times, that will all make sense, because it's not the kind of question that makes sense at first glance, that's for sure. Let's take a look at the last one they've inflicted on us here. Which is a very similar situation where they've changed the commission to the salespeople just to make our life complicated. So Blue Lake Marina sells a make of cruiser for $16,800. So again, they've been very straightforward and told us the selling price. This is their selling price. The regular selling price covers overhead of 15% of cost. So overhead, which is expenses, equals 0.5 cost. And a normal net profit, so profit, equals 0.1 of cost. And armed with this, we can figure out their cost. S equals C plus E plus P. So 16800 equals cost plus 0.5 cost plus 0.1 cost. So pretty much exactly the same process as the question we just did. 1 plus, oh, I've changed this 15% to 0.5. Sorry about that. That would screw everything up badly. Thank you. Thank you to the people who pointed that out and saved me from going in a terrible direction. So 1 plus 0.15 plus 0.1. So this is 16800 equals 1.25 cost. So cost equals 16800 over 1.25. And we have an answer of 13440, which looks good. So now they tell us about the artificially inflated price. The cruisers were marked with a price that allowed the marina to offer a 20% discount while still should be maintaining its regular gross profit. So we're going to go we know the price they want to get. We were given it 16800. We don't know the artificially inflated price, but we do know they're offering a 20% discount. So the list equals 16800 divided by 0.8. So it turns out they put a price tag of 21,000 on there. So at the end of the boating season, the cruiser was marked down. The marina made 25% of its usual profit. So let's figure that out again, just like we had to in the other one. Profit equals 20. What was profit? 0.1 times cost, which is 0.1 times 13440. So 0.1 times 13440 is 1344. So that's the regular profit they wanted to make. But we want to find the reduced profit. And they said the marina made 25% of its usual profit. So 0.25 times the usual profit. What is that? So the reduced profit is 336. So we can make a note that we'll need that number later. And now let's look at the commission. The usual commission paid, or they reduced the usual commission paid to the sales personnel by 1/3. The normal commission accounts for 50% of the normal overhead. So first off, let's find the normal overhead. Equals overhead is 15%, 0.15 of cost, which is 0.15 times 13440. So 0.15 times 13440 is 2016. That's their normal regular overhead that they'd be wanting to get. The the commission is 50% of that. So COMM equals 0.5 times 2016 equals 1008. So that's their normal commission, but they've reduced the usual commission by 1/3. So we're going to find the reduced commission equals 1008 and a 1/3 reduction, 1 minus 1/3. So they're really getting 2/3 of their normal commission. 2 divided by 3 times 1008. So the reduced commission is 672. So we have the regular overhead would be 1008 plus, or now the reduced overhead is 1008 plus 672. So let's add those two together. $1,680. So now we can put this whole thing back together. The sale price equals cost plus expenses plus profit. But we're dealing with the cost, which we know, 13440. The expenses are now down to 1680, and the profit has been reduced to 336. So what does that add up to? $15466. 56. At which time we've done all that work, and now we can finally answer the question we're being asked. What was the rate of markdown? So for rate of markdown or rate of discount, always keep track of the higher price, the lower price, the difference, and then you can calculate the rate of markdown or the rate of discount as the dollar value of the difference over the list. So the highest price they've offered is the 21,000. The lowest price we've just found is 15456. And I don't know what the difference is. 5544. So we can take 5544 divided by the 21,000 times 100 and see what we get. I'm getting 26.4%. So those two questions, those two last questions we did, those are the only places where they've changed the rule of expenses always being based on the regular selling price. They've taken the commission part of the expenses out and actually reduced it. So that's why those two questions are basically so confusing. So we're going to take a look at the compound interest assignment. We won't spend much time on it. I will briefly go over the Excel files, and I will hope that those Excel files will make sense to you when you look at them. So let's find those files. Let's see. So first things first, can we all at least see the Excel file? Let me know if you cannot see that file, because it would help if you could. So I'm assuming you can see the Excel file, because I'm not hearing anybody freaking out and saying they can't see it. Okay. So to finance the development of a new product, a company borrowed $50,000 at 7% compounded quarterly. If the loan is to be paid in equal quarterly payments at the beginning of each quarter over 7 years, and the first payment is due 3 years after the date of the loan, what is the size of the quarterly payment? So we know this thing is a simple annuity because the compounding and the payments are both quarterly. Because it says at the beginning, we know this is annuity due and not an ordinary annuity. And because the first payment is due 3 years after the date, we know it's a deferred annuity. And when it's a deferred annuity, we're always going to have to do two calculations. And so I always find it useful to come up with this little diagram just to keep it straight in my head what we're doing. We're starting by borrowing the 50,000, and then we go for a certain period of time where we don't pay any payments. So this period of time is not an annuity. This period of time is just a compound interest question. The 7 years when we're paying it off, this is the annuity. So this is where we have to calculate how the annuity works. This one is just finding the future value of a sum of money. We could do this with Excel. We could also do this with the BA2 Plus and come up with the same answer. And we could also take a look at the actual calculation. Notice for the first time period, this is not an annuity. It's just finding the future value of a sum of money. It's this second calculation where we have to deal with the annuity. And because it's an annuity due, we have this little term with the 1 minus or 1 plus I tacked on. And that accounts for the extra period of interest. When we're dealing with the BA2 plus, because it's an annuity due, we have to make sure the little BGN is up. Once that BGN is up, it'll know that it's an annuity due. When we're dealing with the calculation on Excel, it all depends on this type. When it's an ordinary annuity, this type is a 0. But now it's a 1. And then the computer knows you're dealing with an annuity due. And notice this one here, the rate was just dealing with I, because it's not a compound interest question. Oh, this one is too anyway, because it's not a general annuity. It's just a simple annuity. So they're both dealing with I. That's good. So I don't know if you have any questions, but you should try the calculation. You should try it all 3 ways and make sure it works all 3 ways, because you'll get a much better understanding of how it works if you've practiced it all 3 ways. Any questions on how that worked? And the only difference between what we're doing today and what we did a week ago is a week ago, they weren't annuity due. They were ordinary annuities. And now they're going through exactly the same type of process, but each one of them is going to be dealing with annuity due. And so the process is slightly different to accommodate the fact that the payments are at the beginning of the period. Let's take a look at the next one. Again, this is a simple annuity, but the payments are at the beginning and it's deferred. So we know we're going to have to do 2 calculations. Again, I find it's worthwhile to sketch a little diagram. We start by borrowing the 2,000 or 23,000. We go for a period of time where we don't make any payments. So this is not an annuity. It's just finding the future value of a sum of money. And then we have the annuity question where we have to deal with the payments. This is a simple annuity, so we don't need to calculate the value of P, which we only need for general annuity. And we can solve it with Excel. Or we can solve it with the BA2 plus, as long as we have that BGN up. And I urge you very strongly to go through all these numbers and make sure they make sense and make sure you end up getting the same answer. And we could calculate it by hand. The first one, of course, is just a compound interest question, just finding the future value. The second calculation gets substantially more complicated because we have to use these natural logs. This 1 plus I term in here is the only difference between the ordinary annuity calculation and the annuity due, it's this extra period of interest in here. And you should end up getting exactly the same answers all three ways. So let's take a look at the next one, see what they've done. So much the same situation. It's a simple annuity. It's an annuity due, and it's deferred. So we're going to do two calculations, but notice in this case, I have the arrows going in the other direction because they didn't tell us how much money we borrowed. What they told us were the payments, right? Instead of us finding the payments or the length of time, they told us the payments. And so we were given enough information to solve this part of the question first, to solve the annuity first, and then to solve the compound interest, because what we were being asked was how much money did they borrow in the first place? So when they give us the information that way, the whole sort of logical process works backwards. And that's a good reason to draw the little diagram to get straight in your head what you have to do first and what you have to do second. So in this case, we're solving for the present value of the annuity, and then we're solving for present value again. In Excel, of course, the format looks exactly the same. With the BA2 plus, we have to calculate the compound, or no, the annuity first again. And then we're going to calculate for the present value again, using the future value we generated up here. And we could still do it by hand. And in this case, the first calculation we deal with is the annuity due. And we can see this little term here, which is what we have to see when it's an annuity due, because this is the extra period of interest tacked on. So because we know the payment, we find the present value, and then we use that present value as the future value in this equation to find the original present value. And if you do it all three ways, you should come up with the same answer every time. In this case, though, we've only answered part A. We know how much the pizza shop borrowed, but they want us to figure out, first off, how much did they actually pay? So we took their payments of 1,600 times the fact that they made 24 payments and came up with the total amount they paid back was 38,000. Once we know that they paid back 38,000 and they borrowed 35,000, we were in a position to figure out how much interest they actually paid. The total amount they paid, the amount they borrowed, the difference is the amount of interest. Excuse me. Should get a glass of water here. So that one was a little different because of the order that they gave you the information. see what other nonsense they can inflict on us. So this one is a little trickier because it's compounded semi-annually, but the withdrawals are quarterly. So in this case, we're not talking about somebody paying off a loan. We're talking about somebody maybe saving for their investment, I don't know, or for their retirement. But anyway, he's putting money in and he's taking out withdrawals. And it's a general annuity, which is going to complicate things for us. It's still an annuity due. And there's still a deferred period. So it's a deferred annuity. So let's take a look at how we're given the information. We're told that at the beginning there was $30,000. It sits there for a certain period of time, in this case, 10 years. So the first calculation we have to do is just a compound interest calculation. And then payments are coming out for another 10 years. So this one will be an annuity calculation. So because this is a general annuity, we need to calculate the value of P, which is the periodic interest. So I, C, P, and we come up with a value and we store it because nobody wants to memorize that number. Strangely enough, we don't need the value of P for the first calculation because in the first calculation, there's no payments, right? On the other hand, we could have used the value of P if we had this as P and changed N per to 40, we'd still get exactly the same answer. But it's easier not to use P here. Just use I. So we've figured out the future value. So up here, although he invested 30,000, after 10 years, we see he's got 45,000. Now for the second calculation, we do need to use the value of, what are we being asked for here? Oh, we're being asked to find the rate here. So we're not using P here at all. We come up with a rate, but annoyingly enough, the value here that it gives us is P, because of course, this is a general annuity. So it has to deal with the value of P. But in the question, we want the value of I. So we worked out a formula last week to figure out that I equals P plus 1 to the power of 1 over C minus 1. And if we plug in our value of P here, we come up with a value of I, which is a painful process, but we have a value for I, but we still need to translate it. This value is semi-annual, so I multiplied it by 2. Then I multiplied it by 100 to get a percentage. So I got a percentage of 4.4751%. And they've asked us, strangely enough, to find the rate per quarter. So I divided this by 4 and got this. So that was a fairly painful process because of the way that Excel gives us the answer. Strangely enough, if we do the BA2 plus, we still have to do the first calculation to find the future value. But when we do the second calculation, we actually get the number we want, the 4.4751% as the annual rate. So Excel gives us the same answer, but we had to do a lot more work up here to get there. Excel is much, the BA2 Plus is much nicer. It just spits out the answer we actually want. So when you're finding the interest rate, it's definitely better to get used to doing it on the BA2 Plus. And we have to do it on the BA2 Plus because we could only do part of this calculation by hand. We could find the future value and come up with the same number, but they don't give us any formula for calculating the rate of interest for an annuity. So we have to use either Excel or the BA2 Plus. And I strongly recommend the BA2 Plus because, as you can see, it actually gives you the answer you want, not an answer that makes no sense. And you spend half an hour trying to figure out what it means. And the next question, I think, is very similar to this. Let's take a look. So again, it's compounded quarterly, but the payments are monthly. So it's a general annuity. Right away, we know we're going to have to calculate the value of P somewhere in here. Or we're going to have to deal with P somewhere in here. It's still an annuity due because everything this week is annuity due. And it's still deferred. So again, I'm going to draw a little picture, but it's the same picture we had last time because they told us how much we borrowed. It earns interest for 18 months, and then we have to pay it off. So here we're not taking out withdrawals, we're paying off a loan, but the math is exactly the same. We make payments for 4 years. So this period of time is just a compound interest question. This period of time is where we're dealing with the annuity. Now I calculate P anyway, although in the other one, it turned out we didn't need to calculate P. We found P and had to understand it. And it may be the same here. So same situation. When we're dealing with just the future value, it's not an annuity. So I used I. But we could have used P if we'd changed the number of periods to 18, and you'd get exactly the same answer. And now we're calculating the rate, and we have this same ridiculous problem. When it gives us this answer is P. But we don't want P, we want I. So we have the formula, and we work out the value of I, which is all fine and dandy, except we still need to make sense of it. We have to remember that this was a quarterly rate, so we multiplied it by 4 to get an annual rate, and then we multiplied it by 100 to get a percentage. So the percentage we got was 4.7885, but it took a lot of work to get there. Let's take a look at the BA2 Plus. It's annuity due, so BGN has to be up. We've got to set PY and CY separately because it's a general annuity. and we come up with a future value. This is the after 18 months. This is how much money they owe. They owed 82,000. Now they owe 91,000. So we can solve for the interest, and we use the value we just calculated, and notice the BA2 Plus is much nicer than Excel again. It actually comes up with the answer we want without a massive process of interpreting it. And again, we have the same problem. We can calculate the future value by hand if we feel like it, but we can't solve the interest rate by hand. So as you can well understand, I'm going to recommend you calculate the interest on the BA2 Plus because it makes perfect sense. You get an answer that is the answer you want, not an answer that takes you half an hour of struggling to work with. So I apologize that we went through those so quickly. I'm hoping that when you go through them and take a little more time, they will make more sense than they did when I rushed through them. Let's shrink these down again. View 100%. You might need to know this, view 100%, because I think sometimes I've sent them to you and they're still expanded. So we'll call it quits there today. We're about 3 weeks away, unfortunately. 2 weeks away from another midterm test. Your next midterm test is only dealing with chapter 5. All 3 sections of chapter 5 will be on the test. And so there'll be 15 questions on chapter 5 and 10 compound interest questions. So have a good week. We'll either see you next Monday or next Tuesday, or we'll talk with you during the week if you have any doubts or questions. So have a good week. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will send the snapshots to you, and I will post the recording of this class. Have a good week.